We're going to go on to the second, oh, my slides are playing up, second session. And we are going to be looking at space in particular in this, and technology and 5G and innovation. And we have Anna and Julie from SesTrans looking at the innovation side of things in a rural area. Now, I don't know about you, but in the news over the last couple of weeks, there's been everything from jet-packed medical assistance in rural areas for medics being flown here, there and everywhere, to autonomous boats on the Thames. So really, this is the time for innovation. We often talk about the barriers to innovation, so we're going to be positive and look at what can be done. And again, I'm going to hand over to Alex, and he's going to chair this session. And I'm sure there's going to be lots and lots of questions in the chat. I'm, for one, I'm going to enjoy being able to sit back and look at the photographs while I hand over to Alex and the team, which is Paul Coffey, Ken Gordon, and Anna Herman.
Yeah, thank you very much again, Jenny. Paul, if you want to fire up your slides, please. And just as Paul's doing that, just a reminder that the session's been recorded. If you have to drop out at any point, the recordings will be available in the next few days to look at. Again, please post questions. I dare say that because this session is focused on connectivity, it's a subject matter that's close to all of our hearts, either from a personal, business, or potentially both standpoint. So please put some questions into the chat box, and we'll get around to answering them in the second half of this session. These are, again, short, sharp, 5-minute presentations thereabouts. So first up is Paul Coffey from the Scotland 5G Centre.
Super, thank you, Alex. So yeah, welcome. Good morning, all. Delighted to be here today to, I guess, talk you through, yeah, Scotland 5G Centre. So I guess brief background for myself. I'm more from the industry side of things. I've been in post for 6 months, and I've moved up to Scotland from Bristol. So yeah, excited to be here and to join you today. Bear with me. Okay, so 5G, I mean, what is it? It's, you know, an explosion of possibilities is what it is. And it's much more than just, you know, gigabit throughput or low latency or a large number of connected devices. It is all those things, but and some as well. And I think that's the important thing for me. You know, 5G, I don't anticipate there'll be a killer application for 5G. I anticipate it's been designed really to be all things for all men, which could mean it's actually just basic connectivity to someone on a remote island or something, and that is the you know, the real benefit of it. I think it can be sliced and diced in numerous ways, and you know, I think, you know, the centre is there to promote it, to make sure people are, you know, fully appreciate that. So bring in the Scotland 5G Centre. We're pretty much 12 months old. I'd say only been in post 6 months now, but we're a year old and backed by Scottish Government. So we've had now pretty much over 9 million investment from Scottish Government. And we have 3 founding partners: the University of Strathclyde, the University of Glasgow, and Scottish Futures Trust. And, you know, what are we there to do? Well, it's really about this, you know, accelerating deployment of 5G and the adoption of services. You know, we want to see Scotland implementing the best 5G practice to accelerate that infrastructure rollout. Where mobile operators have perhaps failed, or the business case has failed, to be precise, you know, we need to look at how can 5G be utilised for that? How can we explore different business models? You know, we want to enable businesses to reap the benefits of this enhanced mobility, flexibility, reliability, and security. So, you know, one of the projects we started off last year is this 5G New Thinking. So this is a £7 million project, and this, you know, I'm really excited about this. It's creating a toolkit around rural, you know, solutions. So it's yeah, technology is there, and technology has been evolving. Obviously, we've gone from 2G up to 5G now, but it's evolving in a way that it enables new business models. And what's great, this project is really there to look at enable that technology, but bring in new business models around shared spectrum. So instead of all mobile operators deploying their own network, their own spectrum, this is a shared network, so hence reducing the cost. And it's about then utilizing, how can that network be utilized? It's about integrated business models. Instead of just looking at it from, it's about a mobile phone and mobile connectivity or fixed wireless access. It's layering up the different applications and services and exposing that to the commercial world to make a return of investment. So that project's great, but it's only going to go so far, and we need to do more. So bring in initiative we launched 2 weeks ago, the Scotland 5G Connect Hubs. This is a national network of innovation hubs that we're launching, and we announced 2 weeks ago. And it's a national network where we're going to roll out on linking in with regional accelerators, regional hubs, and we're also going to have a mobile hub that we can take to those remote highlands and islands. With a view, it's going to be a national facility that we hope will be a catalyst for Scotland to bring in enhanced connectivity to really realise the benefits of 5G that can be delivered. This Connect programme will equip businesses and the citizens of Scotland with the skills they need for 5G, with being an enabler for good. And it's about raising awareness. So what can 5G do to transform that connectivity in those regions? And it'll be a trial and development network. It will also enhance the commercial network. So we'll work with mobile operators, but in addition, these facilities will have a 5G private network. So it's something that the centre will deploy with its partners, and will invite communities in to use it and really begin to dream and understand what 5G is. And I say it may be, autonomous vehicles or flying drones, but it simply may just be a business model that works for a remote community. And that through this national network of hubs, we will collaborate, we'll bring people together to really enhance and take Scotland on to the next level. If we can solve this in Scotland, it can be solved anywhere. And that's what Scotland's there to do. The 5G Centre is there to do, is to promote Scotland and promote that inward investment. Since I've been in post, I've been absolutely bowled over by what is happening in Scotland, how much innovation is happening, and not just in 5G, but in all fields, and in particular in space. There's very much an awful lot going on around how we can bring together 5G space and the satellite community. And the next speaker is we have Ken Gordon, who's the UK regional ambassador for European Space Agency. And linked into that, it's about how we can utilize satellites and 5G and converge those networks together. Ken will, I'm sure, bring you around to this, but there is a funding call open for that at the moment for the transport and logistics space. But an awful lot going on in Scotland, an awful lot going on in space, and the Scotland 5G Centre is very much front and centre for that, in terms of to help people, benefit communities, bring them together with a view of helping them deploy 5G and get the most out of it. So if you want to hear more from me, I'll be staying on for the panel, but there's an email address, we can contact the centre. But further ado, I'd like to hand over to Ken, who'll tell you more about his work. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. And over to you, Ken. Just let you pull up your slides, and just as you're doing that, just highlight that we have other representatives here today who won't be speaking, but are happy to talk to you if you have any questions related to 5G or space connectivity. So Victoria Christmas, who's representing UK Space Agencies, here today as well. And she's tied in quite closely to some of these funding calls that are happening at the moment. I won't say any more than that, because Ken will be stealing his thunder. We'll also be talking right now about some of the specific initiatives and funding that's happening around space. Over to you, Ken.
Thank you very much, sir. Can you hear me and see the slides?
We can see the slides.
Perfect. You don't need to see me. Perfect. Good morning, everybody. What a lovely morning this is in rural Ayrshire, where I speak to you from. And it's also lovely to be part of this event. Thanks so much for the invite to come along and talk to people on islands. Okay, Arran is quite close to where I am, but it's so super to hear all the different stories about what's going on. My name is Ken Gordon. I'm the new regional ambassador for the European Space Agency Space Solutions Programme. I've not been here for very long, and so it's lovely to be here and talk to you. I've got 15 years or more experience in helping companies, SMEs and others apply for and win other people's money. I used to work in Scottish Enterprise, I used to work in SMEs and in European projects. So my goal here is for you, if you've got a project idea at the end, this is a bit of a spoiler, get in touch and let's talk about it. So for those of you who don't know what the European Space Agency is, and assuming the slide changes, yes, European Space Agency is the largest innovation network in the world that's to do with space. Our big focus is about helping businesses use the assets that are in space that we've all paid for through our taxes. Lots of people don't know what space assets are, but if you're using a mobile phone, you've got GPS, you can see fantastic pictures of weather, which in Ayrshire today is stunning. We are here to help you use those to build into your business or your products. We help startups and SMEs and bigger companies. And the key part of this is that we offer funding, sometimes up to 100%, to support a feasibility study or a demonstration project. And it's all about, in the end, using the money that's been invested in space to create jobs and a better life and a better environment for us all. So far, ESA has invested 200 million euros in 500 different businesses and launched 300 projects, and there's still money left to be spent. So if you've got an idea for a project or that involves space data, and it doesn't have to be totally innovative, it can just be a new application of something in a particular industry, get in touch. Now, the money comes in two different flavors, if you like. There are short, in what we call invitations to tender, but these are very time-limited calls around a theme. So those themes might be COVID-19, space for rail, marine energy, circular cities, which is a brand new one. There might be also about plasticless society, those kind of things. These things are open and close regularly. There are 3 new ones, which if I can share this with you, don't tell anybody. There are 3 new ones coming out very soon. I don't have an exact date. One is around intelligent transport. One is around pollution monitoring and reduction. And one's about urban air mobility. And I loved the slides earlier on with the cute little helicopters and drones. Urban air mobility. These are all going to be opening, and they will close with, usually about 3 months. But just to give you the heads up on that. As has already been mentioned, there is a very interesting 5G call open right now around logistics and transport. And if you have a project idea, Paul and I were on an event, I think a week ago, Paul, and we are very much promoting this in Scotland. If you have an idea for a project, or you just want to understand more about how to get the money or what is required, just get in touch with us and we will enlighten you. That's the better word, isn't it? So the 5G call is very much the focus of transport and communications. And it's lovely to hear that the islands have got 5G, and we don't have it here in Ayrshire, or at least if we do, I don't have it. The funding for the 5G call could be up to 80%. The closing date is 15th of December. So stop me and buy one, as they used to say. Here are my contact details. Ask questions, get in touch, discuss and develop your idea. I don't know if, Jenny, you're going to ask us about so much of the stuff we gathered in the break, but to finish, here's my unused, still in the wrapper copy of the Idler magazine, which is ironic because it's a magazine celebrating the idle life and relaxing, and I haven't had time.
Alex, is Ken gone?
Oh, sorry, you still there, Ken?
I've gone.
Sorry. You kind of dropped out a little bit. You still there, Ken?
I'm still here, yeah, if you can
Oh,
hear
you
me.
are. Right, good. You are back. Had you finished?
Did you miss any of that? Do you want me to do it again?
No, I think it's all done. I think we're all done. It was just that little bit at the very end, I think, when you dropped out. But
The bit with the
aside from
magazine.
that,
Oh,
I
well.
think we got everything. It's all been recorded, so anyone who missed anything can view it back at a slightly later date. So thanks for that. What we're now going to do is, Ken, if you stop screen sharing, you've done that, over to Anna and Julie from SesTrans, who are going to, again, fairly succinctly, give us an overview of some of the programmes of work they've been doing that tie into this theme of innovation in rural transport. So whoever's, oh, I'm driving the slides, that's what I'm doing. Sorry, just bear with me. This is my little moment to pull up their slides because we had a slight little tech issue earlier on in terms of getting their slides up. So please be patient just for 2 small moments and we'll get them up here. Right, so let me go back to screen share. Let me share this. Right, can we give you a thumbs up if you can see these slides? Anna, can you see the slides?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. Right, so
Wonderful, thank you.
you.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you. Like all the other presenters, I'm really, really pleased to be here today. It's an honour to be involved, but it's also really exciting to hear what everyone else is doing across Scotland and to share that with our audience who are from further afield. It's so exciting to see how we're facing all the same kinds of challenges, but coming from completely different angles, and opportunities like this give us a chance to think about solving some of those intransigent challenges in new ways. So it's all very exciting. Thank you. My name is Anna Herriman and I'm the Senior Partnership Manager with SesTrans. I'll be presenting today, but my colleague Julie Binders and I will both be available in the discussion to take any questions you have. I just wanted to talk today about demand responsive transport. SesTrans is the South East of Scotland Regional Transports Partnership, and we cover an area which you can see on the map in the southeast of Scotland, with the big city in the middle being Edinburgh, and that is the green area on the map, broadly speaking. It's a diverse area, however, although it's a city region, and we very much hear in the press and in daily speech people talking about Edinburgh and Edinburgh region. Really what we have is an area with very remote rural elements to it, as well as towns and villages, and then sort of moving into semi-urban and conurbations all around the Firth of Forth area. We're a partnership of 8 local authorities, and again for the international audiences, local authorities or councils in Scotland are unique in the range of services that they provide because they not only provide health and social care services and education, as well as libraries, street cleansing, maintenance, parks, housing. They also provide transport and road maintenance. So they are huge in the variety of services that they provide, and that is different, I know, from country to country. A little bit more about the region that we work in. The societal issues that we're facing currently are really one of an expanding population with expanding demand for housing, expensive housing in the city, pushing people and pricing people out further afield. Although to date, most of the jobs and the high value jobs remain in the city. We have an aging population, very much like everywhere else, and therefore we have a whole lot of linked transport issues relating to our rural elements and the kind of population and society issues that we have. The area has huge gaps in public transport accessibility, and you wouldn't expect that for a region with a major city in it. So poor connectivity and rural isolation and the linked issues around inclusion, social inclusion, well-being and access are part of that. If you just stay there for a moment, Alex, please. one of the challenges really for our region is the viability of running public transport services. And I've heard that a few times this morning. So really what we're talking about with an area with rural elements is that commercial operators don't find that they can run a profit running scheduled bus services on fixed routes. And we often see some kind of funding boost coming in that will secure a service for a number of years, and then it slides away when that funding comes to an end. And that leaves our communities frustrated and often finding it very hard to access kind of reliable transport solutions for work. Okay, so last year, SesTrans commissioned a strategic study by SISTRA to look at demand responsive transport. And this particular study really focused on community transport rather than public transport. However, it was a really interesting study because I've highlighted here the very brief summary SWOC analysis that SISTRA did for us. And it just shows that in terms of strengths, the value, the inherent and immeasurable value of community transport, demand responsive transport, is really the social outcomes. It's helping the most vulnerable people access service, leisure, etc. And it's meeting a need where public transport isn't available. However, technologically and operationally, the systems behind community transport are weak, and they want to be both more agile and more secure in terms of how they manage bookings. So obviously there are opportunities there for us, but the other feature or threat, I suppose, for community transport is that it's not a statutory provision, which means that our councils often fund community transport, but they're not required to. So if funding pressures crop up, often councils find it very, very hard to continue to fund at the same level or increase funding to these kind of services. Alex, we can move on now. So I've talked a bit about community transport, but back to what I was saying before about public transport in our region, and just putting it into the Scottish context. You know, over a decade up to 2019, we saw a reduction of 100 million passenger journeys on buses. So what this means is that people are travelling in different ways. Now, some of them, yes, that will be active travel, but the vast majority, we aren't seeing exactly where they're going, but there is a fear of a resurgence of private and single car use. And I'll go a bit more about that later. The other challenges are really increasing fares, and that's a challenge for the users, for people who need public transport. Unreliability, longer journey time, and as I was talking about before, with viability challenges, discontinued services. COVID-19 has taken us and given us a whole new lens in which to review these challenges. It's really interesting because at the beginning we saw significant suspension of services right across the piece. And we saw for the first time, although no one would use these exact words, in effect, public money, public taxpayer money, fully supporting pretty much commercial bus operations, in a sense, a sort of a temporary renationalising of the bus services, which is really, really interesting for us. I'm oversimplifying, of course, so don't quote me on that, but the main factor here is that right at the moment, there aren't enough passengers on buses for buses to turn a profit, and they are relying on public support. So it allows us to see public transport in a different way. So how do we go forward? That's what I wanted to talk about today, really. How do we go forward in a situation where we're not sure how we'll recover from COVID-19, whether we'll overcome these viability issues for public transport operators, whether we can secure a future for our community transport providers who, again, provide some of the most valuable but hard to see transport services in the region. We can go on, Alex, to the next one. We've been looking at opportunities across the piece, and here is one example of an approach taken by Transport for Wales. So Wales, like Scotland, has a devolved parliament with devolved functions, transport being one, and Transport for Wales have worked with Via Van and developed a Flexi app that allows normal commercial bus operators to also provide on-demand pickup services, so demand responsive passenger services. So where they have underutilized bus routes, then they have a real issue around viability for commercial operators. So this allows the commercial operator to get additional income and at the same time provides a better service for rural communities. The real aim of this particular service is to connect rural areas into city areas. It started with one operator, but what's of most interest to SesTrans is that this is a multi-operator system. So it's got a number of different commercial operators now accessing the same back-end system with the same app interface for people to make bookings. It makes it very simple. Probably some governance issues around how you divvy up between operators, both contributions and whatever, but I'm not going to focus on that today. Really what I want to talk about is the opportunities here to think about this multi-operator system that we could be implementing and what that could mean for our region. So if we could go to the next slide, please, Alex. So just thinking about that multi-operator potential, what SesTrans is interested in is a kind of a sector-blind back-end system and booking app. So it doesn't matter whether, as a passenger, whether you're going to access something that's provided by a community transport provider or a commercial provider. We could conceivably, and we are working on a pilot project that would enable both of these kinds of bus service providers to be working off one system. What we want to do here is not pretend for a minute that we're going to achieve something that is suddenly profit turning, highly profitable. What we're acknowledging is that these two sectors in regional and rural areas really face very significant funding challenges. We want to make them more sustainable. We want to make better use of the existing resources we have. We want to make better use of driver time and bus mileage. And we want to make a better go of things for the communities that depend on public transport or want to depend on more sustainable forms of transport than the private car. So really, what we think we can do here is to reduce operating costs, both for commercial providers and for community transport providers. Now, what goes on behind the scenes is potentially could be labelled mobility as a service. Definitely is something that is app-based and depends on technology. And that brings me probably to my final point in the presentation, which is really that we want to provide some form of booking service, and rural connectivity in terms of digital connectivity is not uniform across our region. So at the moment, we have some community transport providers operating in areas where bookings would have to be done by phone. We see that there's potential to link a system into real-time passenger information. That isn't currently doable in some parts of our region, again, because of broadband widths and speeds and black spots within the rural connectivity network. So ideally, what we need to do is to allow a system that can grow as digital connectivity improves and increases in line with all the planned expansion of networks across the area. Get in early and develop something that is in part a response to COVID-19 and the changes to public transport that we're seeing through the pandemic, but also something that allows us to create a much more sustainable approach for the future. And I think that's probably all I want to say. It was a very quick run through, but just to be clear, it's an early days for us. If you want to find out more about the DRT study, there's a link here, and I can send that to you and put it in the chat. And that was focused on community transport. And if you want to talk to us more about our early stage ideas for a project and the way forward, Julie and I are always delighted to talk to anyone about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna, and also to Julie as well for that, again, very informative, enlightening, kind of quick walkthrough in terms of where the challenges but opportunities are. Can I ask all of our speakers, if you're not, please have your mics open and your webcams on. We've got about 20 minutes available, maybe just under that, before we have our second break and head into the workshops. So we have a few questions I think have been coming through. And I'm going to kick things off with a couple I had pre-prepared again in advance. And I'm also going to bring in, we have a chap called Andrew Sterling, who's also joining us today. Andrew has been doing a lot of work around rural digital connectivity, particularly focused on ARIN. And he will have some interesting insights to share in terms of some of the opportunities that is creating based on bottom-up community engagement. So, and Andrew, if you'd also like to come on with your webcam off and your mic on as well. So to kick things off, I think we'll walk it through based on, we've heard the different applications of connectivity, be it 5G or satellite, and how they can potentially solve some of the challenges that we have from a rural standpoint in Scotland and further beyond that. I mean, how realistic is it that those technologies are going to be available to address and solve some of these challenges in the more immediate term? And that recognising, and Paul's touched on this, that 5G is still fairly early in its infancy in terms of its rollout. So maybe either Paul or Ken, do you have a sense of how relevant these emerging technologies will be to rural in the next 12 to 18 months? Are there any particular user cases you see as being most immediate in terms of helping rural?
I'll kick things off. Yeah, so it's a good question, and you know, I guess we can't just kick it down the road because we think it's not going to help in the next 12 months. So you know, for myself, we need to take something positive out of this pandemic, and it's very much here. Certainly has pushed telecoms up the agenda. And, you know, we need to look at, whilst 5G is good, it still needs to connect to fiber at some point. So we need to look at this holistically and be cognizant of, a lot of these exciting use cases are still a number of years away. And so we need to plan for that, but also be cognizant of what we can do here and now. So there are some things that you can do now, and that's the thing, a community broadband network or something that if you can get access to support and funding, the technology is there now. And can we do that on grand scale? It's going to be difficult to do, but in certain pockets and populations, the technology is there to do. And so from a centre's perspective, what we're trying to do is hone in on some of these, identify best practice, and really help people to look at who are the suppliers doing this, how we can do it, how we can bring them together, because there's a lot of motivation and will out there, but being pragmatic, doing stuff in the next 12 to 18 months will be difficult, but it's doable. Technology is there to support it.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. Ken, would you have a view? Because I guess for a lot of us, for the layman, when we think about satellites, it's not necessarily something, a technology we feel is being immediately relevant in rural. So what's your sense, based on your engagement with the satellite community, in terms of how either current satellite technology or emerging satellite technology can provide and create real value for rural communities?
It certainly can, and I think there's an awful lot more going on than anyone ever realizes, particularly in the CubeSat, the small satellite world, if you like. Again, Scottish companies, as everyone probably knows, there are more satellites made in Glasgow than any other city in the UK, in Europe. So there's an awful lot going on. A lot of satellites are going up there, and they're all there doing different things. But all of these things we've been talking about around filling in the gaps, making sure 5G is truly available everywhere, is all possible. I've got nothing to say in terms of how, I think I feel like everyone else. Wouldn't it be lovely to have 5G everywhere? And we're not quite there yet, as Paul has said. But the activity level is extremely high. There's some very interesting new launch data coming out from, I think, last weekend. Another bunch of satellites were launched. So don't underestimate what we do. There is an awful lot of space in Scotland, and there's an awful lot of things going on, and the activity level is high. Those little satellites, which might be the size of a, if you drank whiskey, a whiskey bottle or a whiskey bottle box, they're all up there. Lots of them are up there already, Scottish made, Scottish built, and they're there to be used. And sometimes the data is free. So I'm very optimistic about that side of it because the satellites are there. I think it's the 5G that I'm relatively ignorant about, and we can see in all of our communities, well, certainly not in mine, but in some cities, 5G rolling out in the streets. That is the key part of the link, I think. So there is lots going on, and pretty much every month there are launches going on that are putting Scottish small satellites up there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ken. Maybe if we can turn to Andrew, if you're there, Andrew Stirling, and
Yes.
put more of a local context in this, because it's all very well talking generically about technology, but ultimately the acid test is really about what's happening on the ground. So Andrew, can you just give a kind of quick summary of some of the work you've been doing on ARIN, who you've been working with, and some of the outcomes that are being achieved?
A little bit of background first. I mean, I started off in broadcast technology and distribution, and then worked for a number of years with Microsoft, looking at how we get the last half of the world's population, about 3.5 billion people, connected to broadband, where all the opportunities and opportunities to escape from poverty come from. And some of the techniques that we've worked on for that are just as relevant in rural parts of Europe and, of course, Scotland. And so I'd been leading a trial in Cambridge and got in touch with the University of Strathclyde, and eventually we did a little trial in Glasgow, and got connected with a little group called Connect ARIN back in 2016. And ARIN had some problem areas with its connectivity. You know, unfortunately, the prevailing broadband technology makes use of old telephone lines, and they're not always in great condition or appropriate for rural areas. But anyway, we got in discussions, and we had at the University of Strathclyde also been approached by a company that was going to use some of this new wireless technology that Microsoft and others have been pioneering in other parts of the world. And it seemed an ideal opportunity to try and bring this over to fill in an area which at that point didn't have any plans to have decent broadband. So we got started, introduced the company to a local community, and the local company as a result, the company as a result started a local company called ARIN Broadband. And that initiative has been rolling out, started off in a place called Macquarie in the northwest of ARIN, and has rolled its way right round to Brodick, where I am right now. And what's been really good is to see the initiative that's tapped into, because there are skills locally, and I've been trying to encourage some too through an initiative called the Digital Blacksmith, which I'm very also pleased has also been emulated in Orkney. And that's all about providing digital capability for local organizations. So yes, we could see a young mum, for example, able to look after her family. And previously she'd been enrolled on an Open University degree course, and she used to have to drive across the island. That's about a 10-mile journey every time she wanted to send an email and put her latest assignment up. And now that ARIN Broadband called by and delivered her, I think, 30 or 40 megabits per second, she's absolutely delighted because she can switch between jobs that she wants to do. She can even relax sometimes. I think that's, that'll be a novelty for her. Another example, very powerful for me, was a garage, again on that west side of the island, where the garage owner can only really buy cars through online auctions now. That's the key route. But previously, when he saw a car he wanted and clicked on it, unfortunately, he purchased the car afterwards because the stream was so slow to update. Since he's got Aaron Broadband, he can now actually have 2 auctions up simultaneously. And in the words of the local Aaron Broadband manager, his jaw just dropped. He just could not believe that it was possible to get decent broadband in a place as remote as this. And in fact, we've brought up representatives from the Welsh government, that was 2 or 3 years ago now, to see how you could really make a low profile connectivity work in this sort of remote, very beautiful and very challenging environment. And so the Welsh government representative did a little video interview using Facebook Messenger from the nice remote cafe that had only recently joined the Aaron Broadband network. It's really brought transformation. And so now we're able to have discussions about how we can use data to help towards Aaron's recovery and a sustainable future, including thinking about an initiative called the Digital Twin, where it's possible to create, use data, build the data sets that allow you to harness resources, coordinate activities, which will help Aaron's community, residents and businesses work together more effectively to make the best use of the resources we've got and manage things better. So there's a really exciting future, and that's opened up by connectivity. And number one, it's building on the fiber that's been rolled out across the West Coast or up the West Coast over the last few years, but then building new wireless technology around that. And you know, it's going to be a hybrid because there are different technologies that are appropriate, combination with things that individual communities can roll out themselves. Operators will roll out. We've got EE promising to get to 95% geographic coverage, which will help. There's going to be a patchwork of things. And of course, in the mountains, if we look at the north of Aaron, it's very rugged peaks. Probably satellite will be one of the ways that you can get in there because there's not much else that can really. So yes, I need to think flexibly and use the new technology, which makes this connectivity more affordable.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrew. I think what it does is brings to life, in a very real sense, what can be achieved. You know, what difference it's making for local businesses, and of course, this all ties into transport as well, because integrating transport requires communication, and communication requires connectivity.
Yeah.
So just going to move on in the few minutes we've got left. I'm just checking on what's coming up in the chat as well. So one common theme that's coming out in the chat box is that around digital literacy and education. So I see Anna nodding there. So Anna, perhaps if you'd like to chip in and just give your perspective on what you feel should happen and perhaps isn't happening in terms of educating communities and getting support for that education to bring up those levels of digital literacy.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. These are such important questions, and I'm struggling to keep up with the chat because it's making my head ping in all directions. But I'm glad people are bringing it up because transport isn't a thing in itself. It isn't an end in itself. Transport is a derived demand. It's what we use to get about, to do things. Therefore, transport has to be developed by the people that use it and informed by the needs of people that use them. And I think that there's a twin element here of one is being where people are at now and being accessible to where people are at. And then there's this other element in the discussion around how we support and educate people to use technology to access transport, if that's the way we're heading. And I think that is absolutely vital. We cannot just assume that when we put apps out there, everyone will naturally navigate to them. And I think some of the points that have been made are extremely valid. But I think it's also about saying, and this is why I made some comments about collaboration, coming back to, transport has to be designed by users. It has to be, transport solutions have to meet the needs of the people. We're talking about something that supports operators, but only in terms of supporting operators to meet the needs of the communities that we have to serve. So really, it's kind of closing that circle and coming back to where are people, where are they at? How easy is it for them to get online? If they aren't, they're able to, but they don't want to, why is that? And create a number of pathways into the services that really just allow people to access as much transport as possible. I'm not an education or a community development professional, so I don't know the exact how around how we go about these things, but I know that community transport providers have incredibly strong links into their customer base, and I think they maybe are a very good place to start in terms of assessing the needs of people who want to book. So thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And that's again very pertinent and relevant because it's not just about transport. In our own shoes and those of the people that we work with, collaborate with, we all have needs that are derived through transport. That's important. I think what I'd also like to do is bring in Sarah Foreman from Vivan. I think it was either Paul or somebody mentioned Vivan earlier on in one of the projects in Wales, and Vivan are doing some interesting stuff around demand responsive transport in different parts of the UK and have a particular focus on rural as well. So Sarah, if you're there, I'm quite happy for you to come off mute and just very succinctly, if you would do, just give a quick précis of what Vivan are doing to support more integrated rural transport.
Sure, thanks very much, Alex. So hi, I'm Sarah. You'll have to forgive the American accent. I promise I'm based in the UK. Have been actually for some years. And as Alex said, we're focused quite a bit on figuring out ways that we can use technology to help enhance access to public transport in a pretty wide range of circumstances and situations. Anna actually mentioned one of these that we've recently launched in partnership with Transport for Wales. We're working with TfW to run this flexi service that's providing on-demand buses in centers like Cardiff and Newport, as well as increasingly more rural areas. For example, we recently expanded to Pembrokeshire, where a community transport organization is actually delivering the service, but riders are still able to use the same app, the same almost store window to be able to book buses, whether they're in that urban center or at home in a more rural community. And so that's actually built on the same basic concept of using a system to say, here's where I am, here's where I need to go in an app, or calling into a central booking line if you don't have access to a smartphone, or using a web portal if you have access to a desktop computer, but not to a smartphone that we use in lots of other communities. I think one other example I'd call out that's been a particularly positive one has been our collaboration with Stagecoach, who's also on the line in Tees Valley, where we're running the Tees Flex service. Again, this is an on-demand bus service that was really created to figure out how to provide public transport in areas that have historically been left behind and either had a bus every day or every other day or not at all. And instead we've put in this rural bus service that now provides rides within maybe 30, 40 minutes of a request, and has really been transformative for the community. I'm happy to add more context to any of that, but just as a quick whistle-stop tour, those are a couple of UK examples, Alex.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Again, really informative. Everyone else, feel free to chat up with, catch up with Sarah afterwards. In the few minutes we've got left, just a few before our break, one other theme that's coming out quite clearly is that of accessibility, and particularly for those with disabilities. And connectivity in its different guises does have an important role to play in that regard. Now, I know Audrey Burt, who is participating today, has been posting in the chat some very relevant points around that. I mean, Audrey, if you're there, please feel free to come off and mute. If you just want to put forward what your thoughts, concerns or questions are in terms of how we ensure that those with accessibility needs are fully considered when it comes to the provision of connectivity in different parts of rural Scotland.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited by what's been spoken about. So my comments, please take within that context, because I think what the potential is really great. What I would just ask is that people involve local access groups, for example, that sit in and each locality to get involved at very early stages when you're designing the way these projects work, so that they can help you, for example, make the app more accessible to people with sight loss, for example, and also to ensure that the vehicles are truly accessible for, you know, not only disabled people, but we've got an aging population in Scotland, and it will be as important for many of the older people or people with dementia. So just, you know, get people involved at the beginning, get advice at the beginning. It's easier then, and using the EQIA will help with that as well. So, but I think this is an exciting time, and, you know, if not now, when?
Yeah, well, that's it. If not now, when is a great catalyst for moving forward. I think the idea of co-design is coming out very clearly in chat as well. Matt Kendrick from Rootable AI has made that point quite forcibly. And I think that means that when we think about co-design, it's making sure that we've got representation from all the different communities and segments of the community who are ultimately going to be using the transport services that we're trying to improve. So I think that's one probably is worthwhile taking into the workshop that's coming up very shortly. I guess to close, and I'll throw it out to anyone who just wants to chip in. I think what we're finding is that there are lots of pockets of good practice or best practice happening when it comes to the deployment of connectivity, when it comes to the design of more integrated transport services. But what more can we do to accelerate the knowledge share, accelerate the dissemination of the learnings that are coming out from those individual projects? Because we are, after all, spread out internationally in different rural communities, and that fragmentation can sometimes make it difficult to keep track of what's happening elsewhere. So who wants to have just a quick 1 minute stab at suggesting or answering how we improve that dissemination knowledge share?
I mean, from a, as Paul here from Scotland 5G Centre, I mean, that's from a Scotland perspective, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And yeah, we're trying to get our hands around as much as possible. But if there are good examples out there that people are aware of, please get in touch, and we can link into those and trying to help the broader community. I mean, we're massively increasing our reach. So yeah, we like to think one of the objectives of the centre is to be that that vehicle to help people connect and take on best practice themselves through collaboration or through the centre, or how we can help and assist in that.
Okay, thanks, Paul. 30 seconds. Anyone else just finally wants to come in on that point? Take silence as no, if no one's going to chip in. If not, okay, that's fantastic. Thanks for everyone's participation in that discussion panel. Lots of stuff in the chat boxes, so please, again, continue to connect and knowledge share in that way as well. With that, back over to Jenny, who will tee us up for the break in the final workshop session.
Thank you very much. And I have to say, I was looking at the chat and contributing to it as well. And toilets was brought up by Kate Redpath. For anybody that knows, I think toilets has probably been flagged as one of the big key things during COVID in rural areas, because toilets are closed, whether they're owned by local authorities, communities, groups, whatever, and toilets often get overlooked. And I have to say, it was quite interesting. Rabina, in one of your pictures, or the picture, you have toilets in it, so I will come to that in a minute. But well done to those of you that did scavenge once. The photographs are here, it's quite interesting. I will share these with you later on. There you go, a town called Toilets. Rabina, once you've read it, can you let us know about it, please? And Samantha, I actually would like your book. I need something that's not overly taxing, and you said you thought it wasn't taxing, so you can let me know. So there's the final shot of what we've got. It's quite interesting what people have managed to do, and Martin Higgitt's even staged it on the left-hand side there with his Ian Banks put onto a tray. So yes, thank you for that. That's what another one to do. Okay, keep you moving before we go into the workshops. Okay, now the workshops are going to get divided up. You'll come back, see a Zoom link on your screen, and you just follow it through and you'll have a facilitator. So we have about 7 or 8 groups, which is great. And all of this is getting documented down, and we will produce something at the end of the convention like we do every year. But here you go for your scavenger hunt. Go and get something else to drink, get a snack, cake, something to eat. Paper you use for recycling in the office, is that an envelope or something? And the next one I can't actually find, something that you used to use pre-COVID and haven't recently in your office. My one is my paper diary that goes in my handbag, but I can't bloody find it. Sanitizer, again, something someone else made for you. Find all the highlighters in your office, because I bet you there's loads of them, and they're in the back of the drawer or they're on the desk. Find another book, because you're going to need to read it. And finally, toilet roll. Everybody must have toilet roll and a jacket. Okay, so here we go. Off you go, 10 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8 minutes at 11:50, and you will be put into your rooms for the workshop. Thank you very much to all our speakers this morning, and to Alex for chairing. Keep the chat going and keep the banter going, and it's really nice to see people connecting. And to follow up on Anna's thing about collaboration, it's why I started SRITC in 2018. So we're all on this journey together. Stop clock, ready, steady, go. Get your scavenger hunt going.